COVID might not have been on the top of people's minds for a little bit now. Can you give kind of just an update on what you're seeing, locally, but also maybe nationally with COVID?
We've had an uptick in the number of cases since a relative low in March and April, and that appears to be leveling off. That's the good news. However, there's still a relatively high rate of transmission within the community, and we are seeing many patients get COVID and get infected. The good news is that many people, most people, have at least partial immunity at this point. They've either been vaccinated or they've been infected or a combination of the two. So they have partial immunity. And when these breakthrough infections then occur, disease is relatively mild, and we're not seeing as much severe disease, hospitalizations, and death like we saw earlier in the pandemic when people had no immunity to COVID.
And even with that partial immunity, is there any concern that we could see an uptick in cases after a holiday weekend, such as 4th of July, where people are, out and with other people?
Yeah, I mean, just because there's a lower risk of severe disease with partial immunity doesn't mean that there's no risk. So people continue to get hospitalized with COVID, and unfortunately, people are continuing to die due to COVID. It's just less often than before. So it still can be serious, especially for those who are most vulnerable to severe infections, such as those older adults, as well as those who have comorbidities, underlying illnesses that predispose them to more severe infection.
And what would be your word of advice or kind of recommendation for people celebrating 4th of July this weekend?
Well, people need to figure out their risk tolerance based on their underlying risk factor. Make sure you're fully vaccinated and received all boosters for which you're eligible for. Outdoor activities are much safer than indoor activities. 90% of transmission takes place indoors. So fortunately, the weather is relatively mild over this weekend. So I'd encourage people to go to picnics outdoors, watch fireworks outdoors, all these outdoor activities. And if you're in a situation that's really crowded that you can't social distance, then continue to mask when you're around others outside of your household.